You're listening to Second Cut. This is the weekly podcast where we talk about topics in film criticism, history, theory, etc., other stuff. I need to go back and re-listen to an episode and relearn this intro. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who picked a movie based on someone I've heard of being in it.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who's got a habit of just staring at a red light every evening in case something horrible appears before my eyes.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one who's got to put it back.
Yeah. So I learned about this fun thing from Kieran several years ago. Apparently, the BBC does a ghost story for Christmas. I guess yearly. Take it away, Kieran. Tell us about this.
How much of the technical thing do you want? Okay, so with everything, it kind of realistically started with the '68 adaptation. But before we do anything, no, we'll do this and then I'll go into what I want to say, which is a lot. But it kind of started in 1968 when the BBC did an adaptation of Whistle and I'll Come to You. So the full title is Oh, Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. But they named it Whistle and I'll Come to You by M.R. James. And that was produced / overseen by Nigel Neal, who's kind of, if you really think sort of British horror TV, like he is the main one. So he created Quatermass, he created the Stone Tapes.
Yeah.
Like
he's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, without him, we would not have Doctor Who, and you also wouldn't have Prince of Darkness either, the John Carpenter movie, which is just a remake of Stone Tape that Nigel Neal is not happy with.
By the way, if you read the background for this on Wikipedia, it goes all the way back to M.R. James wrote stories in the early 20th century.
Yeah, it should be said that there's, even though we'll kind of be jumping over a lot of the place because it's a fairly long-standing thing, and I'll be going back to the literary side of it. Realistically, there's kind of four sort of main figures that kind of realistically three, maybe four if you include Nigel Neal. And that's sort of Lawrence Gordon Clark in the 70s, Mark Gatiss in the recent era, and M.R. James. And kind of as much as the stories now are trying to get away from James, you also can't get away from M.R. James because most of his stuff is adaptations of it. So in '68, there was a BBC about 50 minutes long adaptation of Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. And did very, very well. And so in 1971, they did another James short film based on Stalls of Barchester Cathedral. And then after that, it became a trend that you do one sort of Christmas time, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, around that short film between sort of 30 and 50 minutes long every year. So it then went to One to the Curious in '72. You then had The Lost Hearts. You then had Treasure of Albert Thomas. You then had The Ash Tree. In '76, they moved away from James and did The Signalman by Charles Dickens. And then in '77 and '78, because all those were sort of historical ones, they brought two of original scripts and into the contemporary time. So you had Stigma and you had The Ice House. They kind of stopped it after that. And then,
by the way, we were discussing this earlier. Those were all on BBC One, apparently, from '71 to '78.
So it was on BBC One. So this was prime time. There's about 4 channels in the UK at the moment. ITV is very recently come in, about late '60s, maybe early '70s. So you've got those, and like they had to sort of wiggle around because initially there was a lot of resistance to having a private company broadcasting into people's homes.
And Channel 4 wouldn't come into the '80s, so still a few years out from that at this point.
So reading, I think it's Encoding and Decoding, you could read about like American TV is crap and the British not wanting to have crap American TV in like the '60s.
So literally it's kind of it was your TV, it was the BBC because it was your broadcasting system, and it is just like it's not just a national broadcaster. This is the only one that was there, and they haven't opened it up. It started in like the late 1920s when it was new technology, and it kept on since then. So these are on like prime time slots pretty much. '78, they wind it down. There are no new ghosts. There's some kind of unofficial stuff and things that are kind of like half associated with it. But in terms of kind of the main sequence, there are no new ones until realistically 2005, when you have an adaptation of A View from Hell. Again, going back to James, and this one's done by I think it's Neil Cross that did it, who would later go on to do Luther as well, along with other things, and then write.
Is this directed or writing?
I can't remember.
Because I have Luke Watson and Peter Harness for A View from
No,
Hill.
Peter Harness did it. Yes, Neil Cross did one of them. I can't remember which one Neil Cross did.
Whistle and I'll Come to You in 20.
He did the Tom. The John Hurt version.
Yeah. So you have that one in 2005. You have an adaptation.
We only have like what 8 years of it, and they're already remaking.
Yeah. So you have A View from Hill in 2005. You have Number 13 in 2006. Couple of years pass. Again, this is the kind of sporadic nature of it. You have Come to You, starring John Hurt, set in the present day. You then skip a couple of years later, and you have a version of the Tractate Middith by Mark Gatiss, who will now and is still kind of helming the ship going forward. And on this one, he specifically puts the Ghost Story for Christmas logo on the front, and I'll talk more about when we get to the chronology about that one. 2018 comes along. He does a contemporary story called The Dead Room, which is vastly underappreciated. And me and Sam were talking. It's probably the most Mark Gatiss thing he's ever Mark Gatiss. It's amazingly
so
weird.
Yeah.
And then after that, aside from COVID, 2020, you've had one every year. So 2019, you had, which one was 2019? Martin's Close, yes. 2021, you had The Mezzo Tin. 22, you had Count Magnus. All of these are James adaptations from the revival, aside from The Dead Room. The last few years, so 2023, we've moved away. So we've had Lot 249, which was based on an Arthur Conan Doyle story. And then last year, you had Woman and Stone, based off Man Size in Marble by Edith Nesbit. So this year, even to the next one we've got, which comes out tomorrow, so it's good timing.
BBC Two, late night, apparently.
Yes, so they normally are around 10 o'clock in the evening. So that is based on The Room in the Tower by E.F. Benson. And it's quite funny because all of these, like a lot of them have very like decent sized named actors on it, if not for kind of international, but at least in terms of British TV, it's a big draw.
Yeah, and generally, like the budget isn't extraordinary, is it? Generally, what you're spending money on is the talent in front of the camera, aren't you? You'll get a star in there to front it. Then otherwise, you'll find a few interesting locations and hope that your craft and your technical crew are up to making it look as good as it possibly can.
So I mean, the one coming out tomorrow, the two names in it are Joanna Lumley, multiple BAFTA award, like Dame as well, and then Tobias. Is it Menzies or Mengeles?
I think it's Menzies. I think,
yeah, because I know some people like that pronounce it differently. Who again won an Emmy for The Crown.
I don't think it's pronounced the Scottish way in this instance.
So like Lot 249 had Kit Harington in it. Rory Kinnear was in The Mezzo Tint. Peter Capaldi was in Martin's Close. Simon Callow in The Dead Room, Sacha Dhawan and Una Stubbs. So Una Stubbs from Sherlock, Sacha Dhawan played the Master in Doctor Who. John Hurt's been in one. Like
I was thinking, what do I recognize Tobias Menzies from? He's in Game of Thrones, so
yes.
In the first one from 1971, Stalls of Barchester Cathedral, you have, if nobody else, you have Robert Hardy in it, who go on to play Cornelius Fudge in the Harry Potter films. So a lot of the people back then, they probably aren't known now, but sort of were big deals back in the day, big TV actors that were kind of
I mean, in both the films we've picked here, and you have both Peter Vaughan and Denholm Elliott, but were big stars in their day, and they were they're very much names to put front and center of your TV movie.
And I think what's interesting about these, there's several things that make these kind of objects of both kind of historical interest and from a kind of literary side, if that's the case, and from a filmic side as well. And one of the things I'm thinking of when I pitched this a couple of weeks ago, because I'm like, let's do it, let's have some fun. And again, I ranked all of these for the film magazine In fact, the update to it was one of the last things we had updated before the closure of TFM. And according to Joe, it still gets hits, and they're just like, yeah, every year. Don't know why, don't know how, but is one of the things that gets the most views for the algorithms. It's still, I think it's still in, like, if you go like Ghost Story for Christmas ranked, it's still like in the top 2 or 3 pages on Google, so it's fairly high up there.
Well,
but there's several aspects I think are interesting about this. One, there's the kind of historical aspect about the adaptation and kind of where Ghost Stories for Christmas come from and the Victorian side like that. But in terms of us, I was thinking about it before that when I pitched this, I don't think we've done an episode purely on short films. And I still can't remember any. We'd spoken about them in past for things like Georges Méliès and things like that, but I don't think we've had just specifically an entire episode where features will get mentioned in passing, but they're not the focus. And I think it's... Sorry, go ahead.
Aside from the short film, something I'm curious about is like why a ghost story for Christmas, especially when at least the ones we watch don't have anything to do with Christmas.
Again, this will come into the historical context, which we'll get into when we get into them properly. Essentially, the nicest way, blame Dickens and a little bit of Irving Washington. Washington Irving. I'm losing my mind. But there's the other thing as well, because I can't think of anybody else like just the phenomena of this and the fact it's still going is incredibly rare for a national broadcaster of realistically one of the kind of wealthiest nations on earth to go, right, on one of, when we've got things where we're just trying to get eyes on screen in order to justify people paying the license fee and all this kind of thing, and they're constantly under attack, and they're trying to run not only TV, but they're trying to fund films, they're trying to run radio, websites, podcasts, educational stuff. I passed all my GCSEs thanks to BBC Bitesize revision sources, all this stuff, and they're funding charities and stuff. The fact that they go, you know what we're going to do? Every year, we are going to make a short film. Not only is it a short film, but it's a horror short film. Yeah. Like, it's remarkably strange, and especially because short films are, I think, for a lot of people, it's kind of in the same way that short stories are seen of by writers, in that you kind of make shorts until you're able to make features, and then you kind of use them like stabilizers. You get rid of them. Like I for one, in terms of short films, would love to see, like, the Odyssey comes out, you sit down for the Odyssey, but there's actually also like a 6-minute film by David Fincher at the start.
Kieran, have you ever seen the Fast and Furious short film between like 4 and 5, I think, or 3 and 4?
No, and that's the point. I would love to see them like just tack on the beginning of films. Yeah. Like the only people who do that really are Disney.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Disney/Pixar thing, isn't it? Pixar became known for a long time. Oh, they're the ones with like the really cool, groundbreaking animation, but they also usually have a really interesting short shown just before in the cinema.
Yeah, because the short film, because of the time constraint, is you tell stories in a different way. You have to craft a different type of story. You have to present them, and the thing that happens is now, because you don't see them aside from like at film festivals, or we go searching back to like, I don't know, what was James Cameron's kind of early student films, or Scorsese's early student films, or Tarkovsky's early student films, and stuff like that. Whenever the Oscars comes around, it goes, now the Oscars for short films, you go, never heard of, never heard of, never heard of, never heard of, never heard of. Best animated short film, never heard of, never heard of, never heard of, never heard of. Not even never seen. It's never heard of, because it's somehow seen as a lesser art form, because it's not got all the pizzazz of big features. So I think it's interesting that I would love to see short films come back as a medium in their own right, and be respected as a medium in their own right. It's a bit like the way Stephen King still comes out with collections of short stories every couple of years, because he's like, I will not stop writing it, because half the time my idea is I think of it and go, this is going to work best in 4,000 words, in 10,000 words, rather than in 400,000 words, as most of the short stories end up being.
Sam, I don't want to steal the point you apparently made before me too much, but I mean, it's just TV. Like, a short film is TV episodes.
But now, I mean, if you do your, I mean, this is one of the things that my old TV lecturer Glenn Creeber was saying. And hilarious enough, I was reading an article today on M.R. James, the Ghost Story for Christmas stuff, and Glenn Creeber was actually mentioned in terms of landscape when his work on Nordic noir. The TV's becoming more and more filmic.
Yeah.
I can't remember the terms, but there are kind of terms essentially for like the filmization of TV, where kind of, it used to be because you're at a certain angle in the corner on a square thing,
Yeah.
you would frame things differently. Now you watch it on the same size screen, there's almost no difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the first major series I noticed that's becoming this really cinematic, this looked great on a big screen, was Breaking Bad. It seemed like this is going to an extra effort, in terms of how things are framed and the color palette and the general aesthetic. It looks big, it looks expensive, it didn't just look like something you'd be half watching in your front room.
Well, the advent of like the HD format too helps like stabilize the similarity. But I mean, literally the only difference between TV and film is the exhibition format. And if you you could break movies into short anthologies, you could put all TV episodes together in one thing and watch an 11-hour whatever. Streaming has broken the barrier. It's all the same at this point.
And I mean, the Ghost Story for Christmas really are now sort of like a sort of Twilight Zone journey to the unknown. Alfred Hitchcock presents. Those are, although they are TV episodes as part of an anthology, they are still films. They are still filmmaking. You go and log these on Letterboxd or the Ghost Story for Christmas. They come up with exactly the same format, even if it's 30 minutes, as your one battles after another and your Frankenstein and all that kind of thing. There's no differentiation. But it's a different style, it's a different format, it's a different way of processing everything. And all of these, and the thing with TV series now is that they're over big, long kind of series arcs. With these, they are little bite-sized chunks. I mean, some of the smaller ones are like 28 minutes. The longest ones, there's the two kind of One to the Curious, there's 50, and then the Whistle I'll Come to is 52, I think. But to be able to kind of manage and kind of the idea and the concept and squeeze them into that kind of package dictates a different kind of storytelling. It takes a different type of filmmaking. And the fact that the BBC is still putting these out, actually, as much as people bash the BBC, and it is not perfect by any means, like, this is slightly mind-blowing that the one kind of thing of short films that they seem to be doing that aren't like anthology series that occasionally come around is, we're going to do a new horror story every year. And you go, what? This is meant to be a respectable establishment. It's like, no, horror stories. That's what we need.
I mean, it's why I end up comparing it to something like Inside Number 9, which made by Steve Pemberton, Reece Shearsmith, Mark Gatiss's former League of Gentlemen partners, and they again they did 9 series of six episodes, and it had a completely different story each week, but none with like a horror kind of flavor to them, and a twist, towards the end of the episodes. It was like their version of Twilight Zone Hotels expects, wasn't it? But very much, as you said, in terms of like the TV format, the kind of regular or semi-regular kind of TV format, and just doing something completely new each time, or completely different story, but with the same kind of ethos behind them. It's it's quite an interesting one for audiences, I think, and one that keeps them coming back, time after time, I think.
Well, and also for the BBC, it's a publicly funded, whatever. I don't know how, does playing a piece of premiere TV, is that supposed to get eyes on it and make like the production worth it? Like what is the BBC getting out of people watching it?
It's about the number of viewers, because it's supposed to justify the license fee that we all pay in the UK. Everyone pays a license fee to cover the public service TV and radio, basically.
The license fee is essentially a tax, and where some of your taxes would go towards like ambulances and fire service. It's another service being provided. So it's not by the government, but it's the nearest equivalent to.
They don't show commercials on BBC, do they?
They show
No,
commercials for their own stuff.
Okay.
yeah. The other thing advertise are their own programs. Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
no products. No products. To the extent that even within BBC Productions, going to be very careful about what logos are kind of being shown, what brands.
Yeah.
'Cause,
They do
so not seen
have
as
external
endorsing them.
funders,
Yeah.
but it's very tightly managed. Because I think they were saying this about sort of Doctor Who when it was in straits, and they're like, we've got responsibilities for people putting in money and stuff like that. So I'm aware they do have external funding, but it's not like, oh, we put it in, show our commercials.
So
Sort of thing.
with
They'll
Gatiss,
have
though,
partners.
it's kind of like, you know, he was in Sherlock, wrote for it, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not familiar with him fully, but is he just sort of like, we can't get Stephen Moffat for this, but we have the next best thing?
Well, the thing is, the last
Mark Gatiss has been a good part of BBC for years and years. I mean, you know, from League of Gentlemen, Doctor Who, Sherlock, various other things. Yeah, he's one of the more bankable creative voice. You know, both as an actor, but also as a writer, a presenter, a producer. You know, everything.
And essentially, what happens if you need anything kind of, especially kind of horror and kind of traditional gothic stuff, and a little bits of sci-fi as well, you go to him. So in 2010, he did a 3-part documentary series, I think it was for the BBC, called History of Horror. And famously, in the second one, he kind of, if not introduced, but popularized the term folk horror. That documentary, one of the driving forces, that term becoming popular.
Yeah, because a lot of people had linked the same kind of films he was linking together as like a theme, almost like a film movement, but they hadn't really used that term in that way before.
Yeah.
So,
I think it probably was being bandied around, but those documentaries kind of made it so that it was used more and more to the point where it is now kind of the commonly established term. And as I'll mention later, in 2013, he did a documentary on M.R. James. And as a result of doing that, one of the things that he actually asked for when doing that is, I would like to direct my own adaptation, which became the Tractate Mythos, specifically as a result of that. And there are other stuff that we can talk about later. But yeah, that's the BBC and Gatiss. So essentially, if you need anything slightly late 1800s, especially if there's a kind of genre twinge to it, which again why it comes in for Sherlock, and a bit of sci-fi with Doctor Who, because again that is a lot of it is influenced by Nigel Neal and Quatermass and stuff.
Because interestingly, all of the Doctor Who, has he done three Doctor Who episodes in the revival in the new
Gatiss?
era?
No, he's done more, because he wrote for all of the Doctors before Whittaker.
You know,
okay.
But
I was trying to remember the ones he wrote for. Were they all period pieces? I'm trying the ones that immediately speaks.
No.
So got the Unquiet Dead. We've got the one set around the mill town, haven't we?
He did the edit. So he did the Unquiet Dead. He did the Edit Lantern. He did.
Again, period piece.
But he also did Sleep No More. The
okay.
First-person perspective on the spaceship. He'd done a couple of other. Yeah, he did a couple of others as well. I can't remember. I think he did Robot of Sherwood as well. So most of them are.
Did he do Cold War, the Ice Warriors revival as well? Yeah, which again, period piece technically, because it's
Well, I'm also noticing like the prevalence of period piece stuff on the BBC probably has to do with the brand stuff you were mentioning.
Definitely.
Because anything I'm familiar with barely takes place in the modern day.
Yeah, we'll come to it, but like the latter end of the final couple of adaptations in the initial run didn't go down as well, basically because they're original stories, weren't they? And it was almost like people were uncomfortable with kind of put outside that era that no, it's not historical anymore. It's not based on established ghost story writer. They're doing their own thing. We're scared.
How dare you? Yeah. Right. Should we actually move on to the ghost story for Christmas?
One last question I had. The Wikipedia says the remit behind the series was to provide a television adaptation of classic ghost story in line with the oral tradition of telling supernatural tales at Christmas. Is that what Brits do? They sit around telling ghost stories?
And I did send you a PDF of a chapter from the Routledge Handbook to Ghost Stories, which was published in 2018 and co-edited by one of my PhD supervisors, who is generally kind of seen as a fairly good sort of authority. He's written books on ghost
Should have gotten him
stories.
on for the episode, Kieran.
Yeah, it had taken it in directions. I love Luke. He's a very intelligent individual, written books on like psychoanalysis and Joyce and stuff like that. But he also has very strict kind of definitions of what classifies a ghost story. In a kind of traditional sense, which I personally are at odds with. And he wrote a book in 2013 on ghost stories, which has been referenced a couple of times in other things I've seen. But there are things in there which I agree with, and there are other things that I don't agree with, especially in reference to his analysis of the Signalman, strangely enough, where there are some things where I go, I get this, and there are other things I go, I think you're coming up with too much speculation on too little evidence for some of it. But this is literary, criticism. So in this chapter, so this is chapter 7 of the Routledge Handbook to Ghost Stories, published in 2018, and this chapter is written by Debbie Evans, essentially explaining sort of, in the early days, the early sort of 1800s, you told ghost stories, and ghost stories were a thing, but they weren't established as kind of, he says there are early forms of things. Other people will say that the formula, as we know, it's the modern traditional ghost story, if you like it like that. So the 1800s, Walter Scott wrote a short story called The Tapestried Room, which had been cited by a couple of people I've seen as one of the first kind of classical ghost stories in the formula that we now know it, if you like. There's a section of Red Gauntlet as well that has this. So this is kind of trundling on the background. In terms of what we now know, essentially, we kind of have to blame Dickens, as with most things in Victorian England, most traditions for Victorian Britain.
Goes back
you
to
kind of
Dickens.
blame Dickens, yeah. So he comes out, and Evans' chapter goes into a lot of detail about this and is mainly focused on Dickens. But that comes out in 1943, and although you had kind of scary stories, like they weren't kind of, as we know them today. What kind of Christmas Carol did is it told a ghost story, but it packaged in morals hidden behind a ghost story kind of thing. And as sort of Christmases in times gone before, in the medieval times and stuff like that, where you had a lord of the manor that would throw open his gates and all the peasants would come in and you'd have a big feasting. Essentially, in the sort of early 1800s, kind of Christmas starts to move indoors to become a slightly private thing. There is some influence from Irving as well, but I can't remember exactly.
When the royal family started bringing a tree inside and decorating it and having presents around the fire, that's when it became fashionable, and that's when the middle class thought, "Oh, we'll be a bit more like the royals. That they seem to be up on this, so we'll do the same."
Scrooge is a jerk because he doesn't let people into his house to eat with him.
Kind of thing. He's old and alone and that kind of thing. And essentially, Christmas Carol is sort of trying to say, kind of let people open, come in, let's celebrate Christmas in a familial way. And part of that was changing the fireside into a hearth, a place to gather around. And again, at the time when not as many people could read, sometimes you get a story and you'd have it read out to them. So it would be continuing an oral tradition in that sense. There's the other thing that obviously at Christmas, you've kind of got the dark side outside. It is pitch black out there. So at these times, if you're sitting by the fireside and you're thinking, your mind might naturally go to what's out there in the dark. So the dark times kind of become sort of a good time to tell ghost stories.
Makes sense.
And so Dickens kind of, with the success of Christmas Carol, for the next couple of years, he writes like a ghost kind of, or a Christmas book or story each year. Along with this, you have his presence as an editor for Household Words, and then eventually, is it All the World Round, I think it is, as a magazine, as a fiction magazine, along with his writing, which is copious. You've seen some of the sides of some of the books, they're bricks, and remember, he's writing this all by hand. It's ridiculous. Very energetic and trying to have social lives and visit Edgar Allan Poe and things like that. But as the editor, he would get a lot of his friends to come in and contribute stories, and quite a lot of them would be ghost stories. So Wilkie Collins contributed a few. I think Elizabeth Gaskell contributed one or two. Charlotte Riddell contributed a couple. And this would go on through his magazines as it went throughout, so that you would have these stories kind of filtering in, and it became a tradition. And through this, it became kind of set in stone. Your general tropes, however it was, and a lot of the time there would be some kind of social slant to it. Christmas Carol itself, partially inspired, I think, in that article, when he worked, I think he was actually at one of the poorhouses for a very short time in his childhood, and so that kind of lingered with him, and it was a thing of that to go into the Christmas Carol. As the chapter says, by kind of the sort of 70s, 80s, 90s, what you eventually have, we've moved from kind of the wild horror fireside tales to a sort of cozier, pleasing, chill sort of thing that you encourage.
It's something to send people off to bed with, isn't it, on Christmas Eve? Just a little thing to have in the back of their minds, before
a kind of
they
pleasing
settle down for the night.
shiver,
Would you guys sit around and like read a ghost story on Christmas Eve, or was that not a thing for your
No.
families?
Bearing in mind this is like 150, 160 years ago.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't live in Victorian England.
Well, I don't know. You might.
Although sometimes with the power cut, it feels like it. Yeah, but then sort of by the 1880s, 1890s, you have people, again, like this article saying, people like Henry James writing The Turn of the Screw, for example, where sort of this neat little conclusion that you have where everyone's given a message and you send off because there's a lightheartedness to Christmas is not resolved. It's like, what would you say if we had two children involved in this, and right at the end of the book it's just there's a dead kid. It's like one of the final image pretty much is like one of the child's dead, and even though it's a story within a story, you get the beginning of that story, but you never have like the person narrating it end it off. And actually, interestingly enough, the opening narration of the story within the story is people around a hearthside trading ghost stories. Again, this is before the invention of film. The literacy rates were lower back then. It might be one or two people reading aloud or discussing around the fire. What do you do for entertainment in the 1870s, 1880s? You probably talk around and discuss. If it's cold at night, you light a fire. Dark outside, you might trade ghost stories. But as Derry Evans is saying, kind of this one kind of disrupts that by not having a very nice, pleasing thing at the end.
Yeah.
Around this time, in the late 1870s, 1880s, you have the birth and the education of M.R. James. And M.R. James will eventually become provost of Cambridge and then King's College, Eton, as well, in sort of the 1900s up until 1936, I think his death is. And in sort of the late 1890s, when he was, I'm not sure if he was a dean then, but he was definitely a professor at that time, very highly educated. By the age of like 17, he'd gone to a couple of libraries and catalogued all their medieval manuscripts, all like 5,000 of them. He was known as a medieval scholar.
Yeah, there's a bit in the Matt Gatiss documentary as he arrives at the university. Says, I want to catalogue all of your medieval kind of parchments and everything like that. And then like one of the experts saying the incredible thing about all this, not only that the student did this, but he did most of it while he was still an undergraduate, basically.
Yeah.
So just arrived at the university. It's like, right, this is my project now. I'm going to do like the work of 10 men.
Yeah, the son of an Anglican vicar. And that has a very big influence on a lot of the stories that he writes. Son of an Anglican vicar goes in and essentially gets his kind of stock and trade in being a medieval scholar and an antiquarian with vast knowledge of biblical texts, of sort of medieval manuscripts, kind of got them all catalogued, referenced, absolutely everything. This is his stock and trade. He is not an author. His daily profession is working for a university as a scholar. But he wasn't he was a lifelong bachelor. There have been many questions about his sexuality over the time. Repressed is the 1890s, early 1900s, definitely. Although essentially enough people have said enough to go, if he wasn't, you could have fooled a lot of people. If he wasn't queer in some way.
It's been theorized that he was madly in love with his illustrator, wasn't he? And it's when he dies that kind of really accelerates his own decline, really, because it it was just the grief just kind of
Yeah.
poisoned him basically, and
So
he
in the
got
kind
sick
of
very quickly.
yeah, and we come to James because he's such a big shadow over English kind of British ghost stories now, and kind of the tradition that will go forward. People like Lovecraft are an admirer. The Haunted Doll's House he wrote for is kind of just a rip off of one of his own stories, but he wrote for a member of royalty, I think, at some point. So very well regarded later on in life. And so his shadow is vast over kind of British ghost stories, Never Leaving Ghost After Christmas. But in sort of he wasn't massive. He was likable and sociable, but you kind of in his own way. Apparently, if you brought up kind of political discussions with you, he kind of just shut them down. He was very conservative as an individual, and this comes into things like Warren the Curious. Very conservative to the point that he didn't approve of the idea of letting women into Cambridge. Because he thought that if you let a few in, essentially the floodgates are open and suddenly there are no scholarships for men. How dare you? Again, bearing in mind he was born in like 1860 something, 1870 something. We can investigate, probably not excuse, but we can go. If you're born in that time and you're raised in a kind of in Cambridge,
You're gonna
essentially,
you're gonna have certain attitudes, aren't you?
Yeah. So we don't excuse them, but we can try and understand them in some way.
That says a lot about the casts of these movies that have like what, one woman between two of them,
Yes.
or all three maybe.
This has been a long time kind of debate. As far as I can work out, there are no in all of his stories where there's about sort of 30 of them. There are no female main characters. This is your main protagonist is female. They're all male.
Because then
but
there will only be female protagonists, and there won't be any roles for men in fiction.
there's so many fun stories. It's quite funny. But in the early in the 1890s, there was a group there, kind of where I can't remember what it's called. Mentioned it in this book here, Geography of Horror by Simon Loxley, which is half James biography and half analysing the stories that are specifically set in Suffolk, which is where he was born and raised and grew up. But there was a club there where you could go and socialise. And one year in sort of something like 1894, 1895, somewhere around there, he comes forward and presents on Christmas Eve 2 ghost stories, Canon Albrecht's Scrapbook and Lost Hearts. And from then on, they were very well received, and he brings forward 1, maybe 2 a year. Normally, the thing is, we think it's about 1 because we know this goes on for about 40 years and there's about 30 stories. So there are periods where he doesn't write them, but if it's 2 a year, he's done by 15 years. So 1 or 2 every year. And in 1902-3, somebody goes, "Why don't you publish them?" And I think he's got about 7 by now, so it wasn't every year, but enough. And he's like, "Not really keen." Eventually, he goes to get them published, and his illustrator, whose name I've now forgotten, was James McBride, 10 years younger than James.
The man he was in love with.
Yeah. Very good looking man from the photo that's in here. He goes and illustrates 2 pictures for Whistle I'll Come to You, My Lad, which is in the first collection, Ghost Stories of Antiquary. He gets halfway through one for Count Magnus, and he's done one for something else. I can't remember which one he's done, but then he passes away. 2 for Canon Albrecht's Scrapbook, 2 for Whistle I'll Come to You from a Lad. I was working on a similar pair for Count Magnus. But in May 1904, he suffered another serious attack, and it was decided this time he would undergo an operation. He was recovering well, but then he died suddenly. And sort of James is kind of the only possible love of his life just gone, and he just shuts down.
If they could have gotten married, his name would be James James. So
definitely. But this is one of the main things that spurs him on to publish Ghost Stories and Antiquary in 1904. This is then followed by kind of sporadic publications. So you get more Ghost Stories as an Antiquary in 1911, I think it is. I can't remember the name of the third one. And then you get the last one, which is Warren the Curious and Other Stories in the late 20s, early 30s. I can't remember exactly when it is. It's just collected. It's published in the various places and collected together. So you have these 4 collections. And kind of between them, you have sort of, most of them are decent in some way. But then you've got like 8 or 9 of them, which are very good. And by all accounts, anybody else, you'd be glad to have this as like one of your kind of classics of the genre. But then you've got like a Titanic trio. I heard it discussed at the James conference I was at last year of Whistle I'll Come to You, Casting the Runes, and Warning to the Curious, as kind of this titanic trio of the classic James stories. And because he had such an influence, Lovecraft had read him and said that great examples of weird fiction. James, by all accounts, from what I can remember, had read some of Lovecraft stuff, wasn't a massive fan, didn't go along with some of his things. Loads of people read it, and it kind of carries on through the years. You get a film so he passes away in 1936, and at this point he's still kind of known as a medieval scholar. That's what he's known for. That is his career. And people have theorized, again, including Simon Locksley, that one of the reasons why he wasn't as comfortable initially publishing the stories is that kind of, I am a serious medieval scholar, publishing silly little ghost stories might be kind of ruinous to a reputation of a serious professor and a dean of one of the biggest and most oldest colleges in the world. How dare I?
Publishing silly stories for pure entertainment, a man with my reputation.
Well, exactly.
By the time Tolkien comes around, was he also secretly writing, or was it more accepted by then?
I mean, with Tolkien, please remember that he got halfway through Fellowship of the Ring and stopped it for 11 years, and then picked it back up again. So, all the stuff going on. I think
Tolkien would consider academia his day job, his main concern as well.
And I mean, the whole point of writing Lord of the Rings and all the Middle Earth stuff was he wanted to give back a kind of literary tradition of myths and legends that he thought had been lost. I mean, he translated Beowulf, which is sort of England's first kind of national text in a way. The people that I kind of work for, Grendel Press, Grendel is named after the initial monster from Beowulf, which hilariously enough stalks in as a kind of ghostly monster out of the dark, where they're all inside holding a massive feast. This is in the 1200s. This is the old kind of thing before the Victorian style of it. So James passes away in 36, I think it is. Stuff goes on rumbling. By the time you get to 1955, you get an adaptation of Casting the Runes called Night of the Demon, releases Curse of the Demon in the US, directed by none other than Jacques Tourneur, who did Cat People, amongst other things.
It's funny. I always forget that. So that's a James adaptation. For some reason, I just
here's the thing. That movie is very good, aside from one thing, which is the rubbery demon.
See the monster.
The whole thing is that you weren't meant to see the monster. And they go, nope, we're going to show a monster. I can't remember where it is in here, but he points out that when it's published, I can't remember where it is, the anecdote, but essentially the writers did it so that there were no demon, and the producers got somebody else to write a monster into it. And the writer said, if ever this one producer, if I'd seen him coming up my drive, I would have shot him dead. It's aside from that, and some people like it, but it does take away from a very atmospheric, very well-directed adaptation of the story, which if you haven't heard it, here's the thing. I, many years ago, did an article for horroraddicts.net on the theme of a deadline being a source of terror in Casting the Runes, the James story, and Ring, the original book. So many scholars, both at this conference I was at last year and actually in Geography of Horror as well, have gone, Ring is literally just Casting the Runes updated, where essentially you are given, in Casting the Runes, there's a slip of paper given to somebody that you wish would intent on, and if they accept it willingly, there is a deadline of 3 months, at the end of which a demon will come and kill you, or you will die in some mysterious way. There's a demon. The only way to get rid of it, you cannot stop it, but you must give it back to the original sender willingly, and they must accept it willingly, even if they don't know that they've accepted it. So they slide it into something and hand it back to them. I believe this is, oh yes, thank you, and then the curse has been passed on to them. So the idea of there being a deadline that you pass on from person to person is literally just Ring. So yeah, hilariously enough, there is another adaptation of Casting the Runes around this time in the 50s. It was for it's an American, no, sorry, it's not Casting the Runes. It's a version of the Tractate Middith. That's it. On an American kind of omnibus, kind of Twilight Zone kind of show. You'll never guess who it stars if you don't look it up. You would not.
Stewart.
No.
Marlon Brando.
I will say we have discussed him this year.
Rob Reiner.
No.
Gene Hackman.
No.
I'm out of people.
Sam, any more guesses?
Who have we discussed this year?
Yeah.
Kirk Douglas.
No. Play along at home.
Douglas.
No.
No, go on, tell us.
Okay. We find out they're coming in. Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen.
Exactly. You're like, what? Exactly. So there are a few small adaptations made, but there's not that much until you get to 1968, where Nigel Neal oversees this production of Whistle I'll Come to You, My Lad, and then it goes on from there. So you get the Ghost Story for Christmas things, and they kind of really sort of revitalize in a way the series. Looking at it, so I think I did a count where the official ones, starting with Stores of Barchester Cathedral, so ignoring Whistle I'll Come to You, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the original run, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of the 19 films are adaptations of James stories. So he casts a massive shadow over the entire thing. And even the other ones, like The Dead Room, which is set in the modern day with Simon Callow playing somebody who's complaining an awful lot that people don't respect the old stories, references the stalls of Barchester Cathedral in a complaint. Read this one, it's a classic, which is the first one they made in the Ghost Story for Christmas. So Mark Gatiss knows what he's doing.
What was Lawrence Gordon Clark like a big M.R. James guy, or did he really like the Leslie Nielsen adaptation?
So essentially, after the success of the 68 film, they were eventually commissioned, and the 68 film was part of a series called Omnibus, which is, I guess, the equivalent of something like, you know how Spielberg did a Jewel for like Universal's like movie of the week sort of thing. It's the equivalent of. And so after the success of that, they essentially went, we want another James adaptation. So I'm fairly sure Clark was just roped in to do another James adaptation, because obviously it's not him making the film and the BBC releasing it. It will be the BBC commissioning the film. So it's the executives all going, okay, this was very successful. Can we have another James story? And so he does a load of them and helms the first 7. So he writes and directs the first 2, Barchester Cathedral and Wood of the Curious, directs the next 5, up including Signalman and Stigma, doesn't direct the last one. What he does do is he leaves the project and goes to ITV, I think it is, and directs an adaptation of Casting the Roots. There's obviously Night of the Demon all the way back then, and that kind of thing. In 1979, you do get an adaptation of a story by Sheridan Le Fanu, who also wrote Carmilla, amongst other things, which had been remade 3 times at the beginning of the decade by Hammer, with Twins of Evil, Lesbian Vampires, and Vampire Lovers. I think it is all 3 of them are adaptation of Carmilla. And an adaptation of Shulkin the Painter. Essentially, the BBC are like, we've run this down, but we want something in the slot.
Yes.
It's about, there are versions of it, very bad uploaded versions on YouTube. It's about 67 minutes long, so it's bordering on feature length at this point. It is not great. It is very wooden. It is very slow. There are about 2 interesting bits of action. I mean, the story, put it this way, I'm slowly working my way through a collection of classic ghost stories, because this is my PhD, pretty much. And I saw the name and I went, have I read that? And went, yeah, I've literally read it like a month and a half ago. Couldn't tell you a single thing about it. I was watching it and I go, I remember something about a painting, something back. And have I read this one? Yes, I have. So it's like, apparently it's regarded by people as like one of his best. Not by me. I'd completely forgotten it existed.
Yeah.
And so then the whole series goes sleeping a bit, and then we get on to the later films as we'll get.
Kieran, you mentioned that 1979 movie as slow and whatever. Can you tell me how A Warning to the Curious is different?
You've got a murder by minute 5.
Okay, that's fair.
And like, here's the thing with A Warning to the Curious. I mean, the last time I saw this before rewatching it now.
By the way, Kieran picked the second one, A Warning to the Curious.
Yeah.
Because it is my favorite. And
he thinks it's the best of the whole series.
Yes, that's why I picked it. It is my favorite James story. Hilariously enough, I have history with it because it turned out that, again, Luke, my PhD supervisor who edited the book we got the essay from, 2017, we went on a creative writing retreat for all the third years to Gregono Hall, little kind of like mansion kind of thing, manor house. And one of the evenings in one of like the basement areas, he went and presented 2 ghost stories. One of them was The Monkey's Paw, which, if you know The Monkey's Paw of kind of bringing upon a demon and treading too far, there's very much Jamesian influences, and it was released in 1909 as well, so it's very much at the same time. And the other one, as I'm fairly sure, I think was actually Warning to the Curious. So I've got a long history with this, and then I read it and loved it, and then I saw this version. But then when I did my first conference last year, so there were 2 things. The first day on the Monday was a postgraduate conference on ghosts in general, called Phantasmagoria, and the second one was specifically on M.R. James, because it was in East Anglia, I think it was. I can't remember what it was, I'll look it up. It was that way somewhere, right on the coast. It was in sort of his area, for the 120th anniversary of the publication of Ghost Stories of Antiquary, where I've got 2 bookmarks where you put them together, and it's got M.R. James with a kind of little
cool.
thing,
That's
a
fun.
new illustration, and in the back you see kind of William Ager on his hill, and he's got a pen in his hand, and there's other things, great fun. But the entertainment at night, they showed 2 films. One of them was the 68 version of Whistle I'll Come to You, which we were watching and going, there's a lot more pom-pom-pomming than I thought of. Remember, there's the 68 film, there's a couple of really nice moments, and there's an awful lot of slow, stodgy stuff. They haven't quite cracked the formula yet.
A lot of an annoying, doddery old man being annoying and doddery.
Who very much isn't annoying and doddery in the story.
Yeah.
And then the second one was this version of Warning to the Curious. So for those who don't know, and I'm going to assume that's quite a few people, it's either people that don't know or people that are fanatics about Ghost Story for Christmas and M.R. James. So both versions are fairly similar. There are slight differences. The character of Professor Black in this is a combining of 2 characters who are in the original story. But in general, a man named Paxton comes to a little hotel, either finds out or already knows in this version of a legend of 3 Anglian crowns from, like a millennia back, which were apparently buried underground, and if all of them are removed, then the country will fall.
Did M.R. James discover this in like a manuscript that he was cataloging?
As far as I can work out, the 3 Anglian crowns, the story of this doesn't exist, but similar artifacts were being discovered nearby around that time and over time.
Yes, so most famously, Sutton Hoo, in that part of the world, was discovered the biggest haul of Anglo-Saxon kind of treasures, basically in the UK.
I think that was a little bit later, but it was around that time, so the stock was there.
But the point is, because even if he wasn't based on particular legends, that kind of thing was in the East. People were discovering things from that period, so there was plenty of appetite for that kind of story.
Okay.
So one of the crowns had been found ages ago and melted down. One of them had been lost to the sea by erosion. This is something that Simon Loxley brings up. It's a great little book, Geography of Horror. I picked it up when I was at the conference last year. And the second half of it is not only going over kind of the stories that are set in Suffolk, but he's got pictures, he's got maps, he's got diagrams of this is maybe where this was, this is where this was. He plots routes where the characters would have taken. It's really nicely done. But essentially, there's one crown still buried there. And this man Paxton goes, I'm going to try and find it in the, it's just out of just sheer interest in the short story, in the film. It's because he's been recently made redundant, and he essentially, this is a last leap of faith. If I can find it, I'm going to ritual my oldest dreams. I've got nothing else, essentially.
That is
Goes
a horrible plan.
Yes, but it's
not
a very
the best
Jamesian.
Get rich quick scheme.
No, very Jamesian though. if you watch enough of these and read enough, you go, M.R. James was a kind of very solitary man who did an awful lot of antiquarian stuff and digging around and knowledge about manuscripts and old buildings. Most of his main characters are exactly the same. I wonder why. So Paxton eventually, by means of going to a church and then investigating around, finding an old book, hears about that there's a story of the Agers. The last person was William Ager, who died a number of years ago, who used to haunt the spot where the last crown was supposedly buried. And through this, Paxton finds out where the crown is, finds the crown. But as soon as he gets it, he keeps seeing sort of a figure behind him constantly coming for him. And he's been there and he gets it, and he meets these people kind of in the little hotel, the inn that he's there, and they go, you know, now that you've got it, it's amazing, you know. And he goes, in the book, it's a slight difference tonally. In the book, he goes, yes, but I don't know how to put it back. In the film, he says, I'm going to put it back. And one's a lot more fatalistic than the other. I like the film version a lot better. I think that's actually what made me fall in love with it. Just the way the character plays Paxton, whose name I've now forgotten, kind of just stares at this crown and he gets asked, you know, what are you going to do with it? And he just goes, I'm going to put it back. And it's just like that dread suddenly seeps in. And so they go and rebury the crown, but something's still after him. Essentially, Paxton gets tricked to going out thinking he's been called by one of the people in the hotel. It's not. They eventually catch up to him, and he's found dead on the beach with kind of his mouth full of rocks and sand, broken to bits and things like that. Has the ghost of William Ager caught up with him to, you know, as punishment for delving too deep? Who knows? And that's really the kind of the main thing of it. And to put it into context, obviously M.R. James was working at Cambridge as a very staunch kind of Victorian, very conservative individual, very much obsessed with the past and traditions and things like that. And he was there teaching through the war. And so, like, a hell of a lot of the young men that he would have taught and known for years never made it back. And he was very much, like, you know, overwhelmed by this. And there is a reason why sort of the first two collections of his stories are great. And then the third and fourth, like, I think in the 12 adaptations that we've got in here, like 2 of them are from his later collections, Warren the Curious being one of them. And it's been regarded as like the first one's great. The second one's still got some good stuff in. The third one's kind of, it's decent, but it's nothing special. The fourth one, the same, but Warren the Curious is there. And when you think about it, it kind of obviously these crowns to protect against invasion from outside sources and the dangers of picking one up and his conservatism and his fear of sort of outside sources, you understand that a lot of, you know, even years after this came out, 7 years after the end of the war, a lot of it is sort of a fear of modernity and a fear of the encroaching present. And it literally is a warning to don't go too far into kind of, you know, leave the past where it is. We like the past, we want it there. Do not go too far into the future because bad things will come upon you.
And that's a theme that comes back and back in a lot of his work, isn't it? Really, it's about kind of we're our own worst enemy. You know, we delve too deeply and too greedily, as Tolkien might say.
Yeah, and again, one of Lovecraft's things as well, that sort of, you know, you don't delve too far. We're on a spit of land, we're never meant to venture too far, I think is the line from Call of Cthulhu. But again, his thing is like, you're allowed to study the past. We can inquire about it and things like that, but don't touch it, you know, because we are kind of perhaps keeping things at bay in that sense. And if we go towards them, then everything will fall down.
See, I'm wondering, why does only one crown need to be present? Like, you're good as long as one is there. But 2
Essentially, there's 3 of them, and they're all backups, essentially. And as long as one is there, that's fine, but we'll bury another 2 just in case. Interestingly enough, with the one that's lost to erosion, Geography of Horror kind of points out that a lot of that coastline sort of, there was between where the inn starts and the tower where Paxton eventually ends up, there was like a settlement there. By M.R. James's time, erosion had kind
Yeah.
of got rid
So
of all of about 2 buildings,
so
and by
so
now
so
there's like
back
nothing there.
I do know that's back in medieval times because I've been to it, a few times. Back in medieval times, there was a settlement called Dunwich, which was one of the most prosperous
Yeah,
settlements of that coastline. It's a really important port for centuries, and yeah, it literally just all fell away into the sea. And what's
yeah,
left now is just a very damp, old, mouldy church on a hill. Basically, that's about all that's left of the town, and a few
yeah.
shops have sprung up around it for this.
So this kind of thing is real and it's happening, and therefore
Yeah.
that kind of works away. And it's interesting that kind of he hadn't revisited in his stories Suffolk for a while.
Mm.
So there's vague mentions of it in Casting the Runes, but that's sort of you know, written sort of like 1910, 1909. And there's a long stretch where he doesn't go to it, but he goes back there in for One to the Curious in 1925. And again, this is where he grew up. Half the things he narrates at the beginning, there's a good 2-page description to set atmosphere. And Simon Locke says, like, yeah, you go there, I can pretty much point you. This will have been the road he's thinking of. That's probably the windmill there. In fact, William Ager's little place where he is and kind of the hillside, he kind of goes, here's probably what the house is, here's probably where the hill is. So for here, this is probably gone, that's probably the building. Around here, this
Yep.
is where the trees are. We can pinpoint it fairly correctly because it's like Avebury, I think it is. Like a lot of the stories still have names that are just like a letter change. So you can pinpoint fairly accurately where he is, and around that area, within like a couple of miles, is where he grew up in kind of the vicarage house. So he would have known the areas, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, in the film version, that's we splitting hairs, but they do use Norfolk standing for Suffolk.
Yeah.
I mean, but very similar kind of landscapes and coastlines. But that was the reason that it went there instead. Maybe it's more convenient. I don't know.
I did read an article earlier about this change, and it's like, yeah, I think it was more for the practical constraints of the filming and getting exactly what you need at the time of year that they're filming it, that just some places work and you don't want to get maternity in the way.
Which would have probably offended James no end, because there is big rivalry between Norfolk and Suffolk, the adjacent counties that make up East Anglia.
You're telling me this doesn't even take place in Saxe-Mundham? My goodness, this is.
Sorry. It's a bit like American Werewolf in London filming the Yorkshire Moors actually on the Brecon Beacons in Wales. It's just like, and I mean, even worse, dog soldiers. They're meant to be up in a training mission in Scotland. They actually filmed it in Luxembourg. How dare they? I mean, next they'll be filming Middle Earth in somewhere completely different, like New Zealand. Can you imagine? How dare they when it's meant to be promoting a new kind of British sort of heritage and legends? Anyway,
So is William Ager the murder guy?
Yeah, he's meant to be the spirit that comes back, or it's suggested. One of the things I love about this adaptation is the fact that it is incredibly bleak. And again, this reflects the fact that after the war, it is one of James's kind of bleaker stories. Some of them kind of, for example, the Mezzotint. In the 21 version, Gatiss has to invent an ending to give a scare, because essentially in here it's just we kind of watch the events of the pictures and go, this is a curiosity. It's a little chilling, but there's no big scare at the end. It's kind of, you just kind of go away.
Yeah, but Gates has to add in, no, it's actually going to be coming for you in real life.
Yeah, because essentially you're watching something like this and you go, well, we need a kicker at the end because it's interesting and people love it, but it doesn't fall under the system that we've got now, the conventions for filmmaking. One to the Curious is just incredibly big, the entire thing. And admittedly, the ending for One to the Curious, this thing where he gets on the train and somebody else, oh, sorry, I thought there was somebody with you. That's nicked from Casting the Runes. That's not in the original story. That is literally something that happens in Casting the Runes that they just lift and just shove there.
Nice.
Casting the Runes is a very good short story. Please read it. It's amazing. But what I love about this is the fact that it is so bleak and it is so empty and it is so desolate. All these big wide shots of sort of Ager running that figure in the background, which is similar to kind of the flapping kind of sheet. If you haven't read Whistle I'll Come to You or seen any of the versions, essentially the big ghost manifests itself as killer bed sheets. There's no other way to say it. frightening bed sheets that form its
Wait,
own
is
thing.
that
But
is
there's
that where we get sheets for a ghost from?
I did know that at some point where there's a first reference of it, but I cannot remember it. I will bring it to you in
An
future.
image that I saw of it. I don't know if it was engraved or hand drawn or what, but like it that looked pretty spooky.
With
the
it kind
ghost
of
thing.
leering over like that and backing
Yeah.
away. That
Yeah.
is one of the James McBride illustrations for the original publication. And I've just
Nice.
realised, looking at myself at this, I'm going to take this off because I do end up looking like Vlad the Impaler. Just looking at it going, that's not great with this down here. Happy Christmas, y'all. So much of it is just on kind of, if you've ever been to that part of the world, so much of it is just kind of the open expanses. It's the nearest to a desert.
It's so flat. It's so flat. I mean,
It's-
it's quite. It's funny because it ends up getting a lot of immigration from the Netherlands and Belgium, in the early 20th century, and those countries again share a lot of similarities in the landscape with Suffolk. It's just so flat and marshy and everything else, and
Yeah. I mean, this version again, it starts off like 5 minutes in with somebody being hacked to death, which you do not have in the original short story. It's like a nesting sort of story within a story within a story kind of thing in that version, whereas this is fairly straight and linear.
Well, it's so funny that stands out as like spectacle because it is so quaint that it's just a guy going and somebody going ah.
It's 1972 on British television.
Yeah, I know.
This is terrifying at the time.
Yeah. And there's lots of middle-aged men cycling back and forth across.
Which was one of
England
James's
fields.
things. He used to go on like cycling holidays around France and Scandinavia.
Yes.
Apparently, he once claimed he'd
Yes.
visited every cathedral in France.
Yeah. And then, of course, in Mark Gatiss's documentary, as a reference to that, every time he's going from one place to another, they have to have him on a bike in a three-piece suit.
Ching, ching.
Very awkward.
Both of these first two movies, it's like when Sam makes me watch stuff with proper British people, but with like 1970s sort of camera philosophy to it.
Yeah. Which again is one of the interesting things on this filmmaking, a completely different time, a completely different kind of like way of setting it up.
Yeah.
But
and we're introducing you to British regional accents of these films as well, Jacob.
That's true.
So.
I mean, they're all
the
they're all
Signalman very
to me.
much, yes.
But it's just for me, it's stuffy, slow, and kind of boring, but with wides that are interesting. That's about all I got out of it.
It's like. I love this because it's slow, because it's just building. And I think the first sort of 10, 15 minutes are just a little bit of getting to it. Once you kind of get to the hillside and you get the glimpses of Aga, definitely, and the panning around and stuff like that. And again, when he gets back and gets it out, it's like, what are you going to do with this? Nobody ever seen an Anglian crown. What are you going to do? And he just goes, I'm going to put it back. And it's just all the any possible height from it just drops. Because you've discovered the find of literally centuries.
Yeah.
And the first thing you're going to do is you're so terrified that you're going to put it back where you found it. Like that's you know at that point, like there's pretty much nothing you can do. And it's really nicely shot, especially for the time. Again, you've got 50 minutes, and these stories are short. You've got to tell it in a short amount of time. You couldn't do the story as a feature.
No.
It just wouldn't work. In fact, actually, probably with Jacob, maybe you'd agree as well, Sam. If you cut 5 minutes out of this, maybe it would have been better because this is one of the longer ones.
I do think like 35 minutes is probably about right for most of these, I'd say.
How much of it does he spend walking around going, hey, does so-and-so live here? And they're like, oh, I don't know who that is. Oh, I've only lived here for a few years. I don't know.
Admittedly, I speed read the story again before coming on very quickly to see how much of it was translated, and all the stuff in kind of the antique shop is like half a paragraph.
Is the woman in the story, or is that invented for the show?
What lives where Aga did?
Yeah.
That
or
scene
in the book,
again
is it a guy? Because why would a woman be outside?
I don't think it's specifically a woman, but I think it's sort of. I asked a couple of neighbors, and they pointed me in the right direction, sort of thing, like a couple of sentences. The stuff with the vicar at the church is a lengthy section.
So this is Lawrence Gordon Clark being woke.
Kind of. Essentially, there are female characters in some of the stories, but they're normally there's one or two that are sort of I think Mr. Humphreys and his inheritance. He's got a wife, but still the protagonist is the male, and there's somebody else in one of them. But then about a third of them have named female characters, and that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you, Kieran. I think it's definitely one of the stronger ones. It's for me, it's a lot. It's right alongside the Signalman as probably the strongest of the whole series. Really, for kind of different reasons. It's just it's funny how it can sum up such an oppressive atmosphere with empty landscapes and just a general sense of that something being behind him at all times. Even when you're not seeing the figure in the distance, you sense he's always got something after him.
Always there, yeah. And this is often initially when it came out, people were like, "Oh, this is just a redo of Whistle the Curious," which is sorry, Whistle the Curious. Whistle, I'll come to you. Even I'm losing my mind. Which is Professor Parkins, again beginning with a P, goes to a seaside resort, finds an artifact, in this case a whistle, and blows on it to see what happens, and then kind of a monster comes after him and it ends badly. So it is along the same themes. I much prefer this one just because of just the atmosphere. I think for the time it's very well written. And again, just the one line that I keep coming back to because it gets me every time I think of it, just like I'm going to put it back. Just the sheer kind of lack of any kind of optimism from that one line, and the delivery of not looking at anyone, just looking at it, put it back. Just really works. And again, the fact that this was made pretty much prime time on the main British sort of public service kind of broadcasting is phenomenally just like bizarre. Like do you imagine, Jacob, like NBC going, okay, Christmas Eve, what are we going to do? We are going to like do a new Edgar Allan Poe story, and we're going to sod all the Christmas entertainment. Well, that's what we're going to show, and it's going to be 25 minutes long.
You get Ryan Murphy to make some horror Christmas story. It would have to be Christmas specific and not just a general ghost story. But I can see it in that like very specific vein.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's not that because they're all kind of private companies, but if you had like an American broadcaster, like
PBS,
sod all the propaganda stuff, sod all the Christmas movies, which we know everyone's sitting down, having just eaten the thing, we don't want to do anything for Christmas Eve. We're going to flick the box on. And what they've done is they've gone, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make an adaptation of House of Usher. It's 25 minutes long. We pumped our own money into it. We're going to shove it in the primetime slot. Like it's just kind of unfathomable to think of, and the fact that it does this well, I adore this film. I think it's magnificently done. Maybe it's a little on the longer side. This is something I definitely thought of the 2010 version of Whistle with John Hurt, and I thought that was on the longer side as well. Cutting down a little bit, but everything else, I think the performances are great. The look is great, and just the atmosphere, just the open landscapes. I think as Simon Locks again, I read this. It's like the fact it's open means that there aren't any long shadows, but there's nowhere to hide if something comes at you.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed with these, those shots, over 50 years ago now, a lot of them, because they're all shot on film, they still look incredible, don't they? Even like the non-restored versions, they still like the quality of the image is still really good. It's they've definitely survived the test of time.
Yeah, I wonder if these are ripped from the VHS release or something for the, I don't know.
Yeah, for anyone wanting to watch any of these, the Internet Archive currently has them all.
Has the full, and I think on those copies there's a couple of slight kind of lost in quality, where obviously they've been ripped from like older kind of copies.
I think there's one where there's a slight glitch for about 10 seconds, but aside from that, the fact that they're all stored somewhere is
that's the treasure of Abbott Thomas, isn't it? I think that has that glitch about halfway through for about 10 seconds.
Treasure of Abbott Thomas, I think put further down in my TFM thing, because it didn't catch me as much. But watching it again, I go, you know what? This is actually just him having fun for most of it, and go, let's do a treasure hunt detective story. And I can bring out all my knowledge, but then right at the end, there's a bit of ooze. And this is also the thing with all of his, they're classified as ghost stories, but aside from like one or two, all things aren't ghosts. Like they're just kind of demons or creatures, or people said kind of almost atavistic, sort of ancient primordial creatures coming back, a repression from the ground and the past coming back, and that kind of thing, rather than actual kind of ghosts in a ghostly sense. So we move on. Let me actually pull up my list, because I'm fairly sure Lost Hearts I rate very highly as well. It's like third or fourth, I think, on my list.
Mark Gatiss has always said that's his favourite because it's the one that scared him the most as a kid.
Have it at 3, Kieran.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you see with Lost Hearts pretty much is a kid riding in a carriage, and then 2 creepy kids in a field waving at him, one of them with a hurdy-gurdy. You know, it's a creepy image, and it's one of the most violent as well for James. This is one of the first stories he presented at the initial kind of reading, in a kind of similar way to when Frankenstein was first presented, you know. And it's like there are kids there, and it's just like we just leave them with like gaping rents in their chest where their hearts have been ripped out, and these are kids, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
So you're saying the Japanese stole creepy ghost kids from
from M.R. James. Hilariously enough, I saw a film at Abattoir a couple of years ago by the guy who wrote the Nakata adaptation of Ring, and I can't remember who wrote it. I'll do a quick thing, but they showed one of his films. This is like 2017, 2018. Hiroshi Takahashi, and Takahashi. It was essentially a film where they're all telling kind of occult Bolshevism is the name of the film, but where they're all telling ghost stories and one gets haunted. And he actually gave in Japanese, but then the festival director's wife is Japanese, so she did some subtitles, and essentially went, I'm so glad to have this being shown in the UK, which is kind of where our modern notions of ghost stories come from. So he obviously is aware of this, and if you're going to UK ghost stories, you're probably going to come across M.R. James at some point. So there's definitely some translation there.
Well, so speaking of UK ghost stories, you've got James on one side, but the other the other main person you do think of is good old Charles Dickens. Good old Darl's Chickens. So the Signalman came a few years after One to the Curious, 76, I think.
76,
And this was the first non-James adaptation in the series.
But at least they went fairly safe with Charles Dickens.
It's like, right. We've done James, so who should do next? Yes, they picked.
And the Signalman is one of the most well-known ghost stories ever written. So.
Yeah. By the way, where was it on your list?
Second.
Good man. So and this, interestingly, was also the first installment that actually displayed the title "A Ghost Story" on screen. Because before this, you just had the what the story was called. It just went into it, but it kind of acknowledged that this was an ongoing series. You had a ghost story, and then The Signalman by Charles Dickens. So,
is A Ghost Story for Christmas like a retroactive sort of title?
Probably, I think, but as it's on the front of all the BBC releases, then
I believe in the Radio Times that's how it was badged, as The Ghost Story for Christmas, and then the title of whatever story they're adapting that year. So this is based on the 1866 short story by Charles Dickens, which in turn was sort of partly inspired by the Staplehurst rail crash, which Dickens miraculously survived, but with severe psychological trauma. Apparently, he never comfortably travelled on a train again after that event. I do like how Kieran's kind of alludes to it. I can't remember where we recorded when we were talking about it, or was this beforehand? But
I think it's beforehand.
yeah. Dickens was traveling with his mistress and her mother at the time, so he didn't want that to be publicised. So he was very firmly refused to be part of the inquiry into what actually happened. He didn't want to appear as a witness, basically, because he'd have to admit where he was going and who he was with at the time.
Wait, but he's hanging out with her mom, so like he's not that discreet.
Yes, yeah.
I will say,
I mean, he was still married at this point, I think, wasn't he? So.
Yeah. 3 days ago, the BBC put an archive on Unported. It might have been from before, but it was put up 3 days ago on BBC Sounds, which is their audio section, so podcasts and radio and stuff like that. A 1 hour sort of podcasting with interviews with other people on ghost stories, and they mentioned the train crash for the Signalman in this as well. Yeah. It's a very good listen, actually. They've brought quite a few people.
But apparently, talk about writer goals. So Dickens, not only did he tend to the injured and the dying fellow passengers, he had a flask of whiskey on him, and apparently he took his hat over to the river and got some water, started dabbing people's heads and stuff like that. So, or a decent guy. But after he'd seen to the wounded, he climbed back into the wreckage of the train to retrieve the manuscript he'd been working on. He didn't want to lose it. So it's like okay, first of all, check everyone's is as comfortable as they're going to be. Then think about, maybe I need to get out of talking about this later, so I don't find out my mistress. But next, my book. I've got to get my book.
I'd like to point out, probably for the serious writers, it would have been the other way around. Get the manuscript first and then check everyone's okay.
Yeah. So this is the story of a man wandering around, looks over the edge of a cliff, sees a railway line and a railway tunnel, and the signalman who oversees it, and he strikes kind of a unlikely friendship with him, and soon becomes apparent that the signalman's haunted night after night by the appearance of of the shape of a man, basically by the tunnel, widely gesticulating and shouting out a warning, and he's trying to work out what it means, what he's trying to warn him about, and what he can do about it. Basically, it's an omen of some sort, but it doesn't become apparent what's an omen of until right at the end of the story. Yeah. So it's a very short story. I mean, I literally read it in an hour. If that, it's. You can really get through it, and this is very much straight from the text. I think pretty much all the dialogue from this is from the story. I think they tweak a couple of lines,
fairly damn close,
yeah. In fact, Lawrence Gordon Clark, who again directs this, talks about the adaptation. Andrew Davies adapting it, and he says one of his favorite things about it was that he used so much of the original dialogue, and he said it gave it this. He said it was this wonderful, almost cardboard formality, and it gives a better period quality than any amount of costume or design could do. So basically, it's like we don't have the money to go in on period detail. So as long as they talk like old timey people, we'll get away with it. And
you'd be surprised how much weight that lifts.
Yeah. So I think this is a really kind of good looking, kind of atmospheric, kind of well performed, kind of two-hander essentially. It's like a chamber piece essentially. It's just the one location that you spend most of your time in. Obviously goes back to the inn briefly, but apart from that, it's just that stretch of the line and the little signalman's kind of cabin, where they have their meeting. I mean, just the interiors, when they're in the cabin, he's doing his duties, he's pulling the levers and sending the telegraph signals through, and just the kind of light of the coals at the fire, and just there's a great shot, where he's talking about kind of telling his story, basically talking about what's haunting him, just how the light catches Denholm Elliott's face, just on one side, just see the abject terror in his eyes. I mean, he's so good in this.
By the way, for me, this was, hey, that's the guy from Indiana Jones.
Yeah. If you just know him as the bumbling Marcus Brody, he was such a versatile actor, Denholm Elliott. I mean, he was just such a good character actor, and doing an accent in this as well, like a kind of a West Country kind of accent throughout. Just
which contrasts nicely with the the visitor,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call
yeah,
it,
yeah,
which has a
yeah,
very sort of posh
upper
aristocratic.
crust
Yeah,
kind of accent. Yes.
yeah,
Hello there. I say,
yeah. I do say, would you
i-
come down here, good chap?
is there a path I might come down to speak to you?
Yeah. Uh, Yeah, there's so much in this. I mean,
Yeah,
one of the things I
yeah,
remember from my lecturer Luke and his analysis in his book, came out like 12 years ago. It also, just for my daily round, it had been stolen by Meta, his
yeah,
book, in their big database. I found it
yeah,
because you could search for it.
yeah,
But in there, he points out the fact. So, along with the waving, the phrase that
yeah,
is shouted by the Spectre is
yeah,
"Hello, below there," and
yeah,
pointed out that. With train seen as a massive kind of thing of modernity.
yeah,
Also, the phrase "hello" was written in writing
yeah,
only about 40 years earlier because it was invented
yes,
for phone calls. So there's things
mm,
about that, about kind of this the terror of modern technology as well being
yeah,
trans through the lines. And you
yeah,
actually do see a few shots where Gordon Clark kind of literally pans to kind of the wires and the signals coming across.
yeah, yeah,
So that's one of Luke's arguments that I do actually
yeah, yeah,
Well,
have some
yeah,
cutting
agreement
to
yes,
the
with.
wires means we're looking at wires.
but yeah, but no, it's very much like a story
Jacob,
about changes, changes that like go from
yeah,
one era to another.
yeah. I mean, it is a story about time slips. So it is about time. It
Yeah,
is about temporality, the
yeah,
future, the past, and
yeah,
stuff like that. And
yeah,
also, Jacob,
yeah,
with your thing of
yeah,
we're looking at wires, I would say that your massive appreciation for the Thin Red Line a few months ago, where
yeah,
half of that is just not looking at the actors.
yeah,
I would, meh,
That's
yeah,
agree
true.
with it.
That I'll give you
yeah.
that.
So yeah, so Lawrence Gordon Clark's way of working. Apparently, a bit like Ridley Scott, obviously has done since films like Ridley Scott. He extensively storyboards everything. Basically, had a very good idea from the start of exactly what shots he'd need, and kind of, I think it's why he was. The BBC just came back to him time and time again for this series. He was just such an efficient director, knew exactly what he was going for and kind of what
Yeah.
what was required. But he also said he concedes that yeah, I knew what the kind of shots I wanted, but the cinematographer David Whitson on this is kind of striking lighting, just elevated things so much. It just got to such another level beyond what I can imagine just from his like little sketches. And I mean, I'd say that like the limited budget is obvious in some regards. Obviously the train crash that you actually witness, basically it's a train going to a tunnel and then a sound effects, and then
Yeah.
they see people going in afterwards, and it's just flickering lights against the wall, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it works. It's you don't need more. I mean, I suppose it's the same thing as what you do on stage, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
you take your you
And,
take
and again,
shortcuts where you can, I
if
suppose.
this is meant to be replicating the kind of tradition of gathering the family around, you don't want
Yeah.
anything too massively
No.
destructively violent either.
No.
Although, having said
No.
that, the installment before this, the Ash Tree, does have some nudity on display, which
Has
quite funny.
boobage, yep.
As you pointed out, M.R. James famously has
Yeah.
a thing going.
Yeah.
I abhor
Yeah.
section stories, and section ghost stories
Yeah.
have no
Yeah.
place at all.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like,
I was actually watching it last night, and all of a sudden, oh, boobs in an M.R.
yeah,
James story.
on the
That's weird.
BBC in 1975.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. But they do make maximum use of the location shooting, to make up for where the resources lacked elsewhere. I mean, that's what the whole 70s stretch of these films did. They shot all on location basically because it was more effective and amazingly cost effective choice, and use their resources to just use the landscape they had available,
Yeah.
and just shoot at the right time, and with the right lighting. It's very effective. It's lovely, like mist, kind of shots of mist rolling in, and obviously the scenes around the tunnel with the red light and everything. It's very effective. So apparently they shot this on a stretch of railway near Kidderminster, which is in the Midlands. Apparently, again, this is from Lawrence Gordon Clark as to his commentary on this, and his main recollection of it. So this is in his own words. He says, "We shot it in close proximity to one of the roughest council estates in the country." which made filming challenging and encouraged speedy completion to avoid the crew being pelted with rocks by youths. So,
Yep, very
so
Charles
basically,
Dickens.
yeah, they got like all like the crew, like all technical crew, basically to chase off the kids or at least distract them, saying, "Oh, look at this! Look at what we're doing." No, you don't need to hurt us. Just you don't need to ruin the shots. Just watch what we're doing. um, um, what was I going to say? So, yeah, his other kind of so obviously it will get to the story. Basically, it turns out all the time that all the time the Signalman is warning the Spectre is warning the Signalman of his own death, essentially. Um, so what he's doing, it's like a projection almost of the driver who's going to be on the train, who's going to hit and kill the Signalman eventually while he's distracted, basically. And as you say, Kieran, yeah, it's sort of like a time slip film. And Charles Dickens's kind of ghost stories, obviously Christmas Carol included, most famously, they do tend to be stories about time as well, don't they? As well as kind of
Well,
life and death and everything.
one of the other interesting things is that, again, the fact he did magazines and got people to write for him. One of the stories that
Yeah.
was published in Household Words was a story by Wilkie Collins, and this is in the 50s. And a story by Wilkie Collins called The Dream Woman, which again involves like a vision of somebody before they are. I can't remember the exact things, but there is some kind of time inversion, ghostliness in that as well. And this is a vaguely common device of a ghost actually being a portent from the future, but the fact that Dickens would have had to see it and edit it and approve it and publish it, there's definitely a connection there somewhere, subconsciously, if not overtly, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, Lawrence Gordon Clark, he says, we're not really dealing with the supernatural, we're dealing with fate. The fate of the Signalman is really the fate of man in the systems he creates that grind him down if used the wrong way. Again, it's bringing in that, changing times and kind of changing kind of, work habits and kind of social habits and industrialization, everything else.
And obviously, the railways invent our notion of time, our regimented hourly things. Because when the railways first started, you'd have big books on the railway stations of what time it is all over the country. So what time it is when you arrive somewhere. When you can get to places very easily, you can't do that.
And the very idea before like automation and like mass communication, everything that so much just. And again, they comment on it, don't they? The visitor comments on like so much is dependent on his kind of actions. It's like it's not exciting his job, but it's essential. He's got to be there and he's got to pull the levers and ring the bell and send the telegraphs. Just to keep things moving. I mean, there was another a very costly railway crash a few years before the one Dickens was involved in. Apparently, that came about because a signalman missed his flag. Basically, he mistimed his flag wave, and a train went to a tunnel, and the kind of danger that wasn't on, so another train followed it in, and they collided. It was in the tunnel. So
there's an amazing story when I think it was Stephenson's rocket, or just like an early prototype train. If it wasn't that, it was like after it, where somebody kind of went onto the tracks and it was going to them at like 10, 12 mile an hour. Not fast by our things, but this guy was so like terrified by it, didn't know what to do, just got paralyzed. And I think it's that guy. There's another guy that just kind of like that, just like got like this leg chopped off by the train because he was just like, looking at this coming at 10 mile an hour and going, what the hell is this big massive brute thing? So it is back then it was unregulated to a certain extent, and it was terrifying technology.
So it's a very kind of faithful adaptation of the short story. They do tweak the ending slightly because the visitor doesn't witness the the final kind of death in the story. He arrives afterwards, and then guys are overseeing the body, and the driver tells him what happened. Whereas in this, he kind of senses something's going to happen and kind of runs towards and then sees it like over, from the bridge. And obviously the big change they make is that when because the Spectre, he's never quite sees him properly for a long time. He's got one hand over, one arm over his eye, and then he's waving his arm. But then in this, when he finally drops his arm, it's his own face. He's basically got a death mask on, a death mask of Denham Elliott's kind of character.
Which is again where the time slip comes in, so it is him, but not him at the same time.
And you've got a question in this version in terms of like chronology and chain of events and fate and everything like that. if the Spectre hadn't been there to warn him, would he have been at the point where he got killed? Would he have died if
we go
people
to
hadn't
Macbeth.
told
If
him
the
not to
if the
die?
witches don't
Yeah,
give Macbeth the thing
yeah,
he's going to be
yeah,
king, does
exactly.
he still
Yeah,
do it?
yeah. So yeah,
Also,
it's
the
an interesting
Matrix,
but
would you
yeah,
still
so
have
it's
broken the
interesting
vase
kind
of
of debate to have.
mythology?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe the signalman
yeah,
said, "I don't want to remember nothing."
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
something like an actor.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think this is a very kind of tight, lean, kind of atmospheric, and really good looking, well performed kind of piece. And I'm so pleased. About 35 minutes is perfect as well. It just
Yeah.
passes by. Passes by. Not an ounce of fat on it. I think it does the job really well. So
And again, this is why short film as a format
yeah,
works where other things
yeah,
don't. If you were to pitch a project now or want to make a version of this, they'd have gone, okay, how do we make it 80, 90 minutes long? Minimum. You'd
yeah,
have 20,000 backstories, other things going in. It wouldn't be as focused. You'd have you'd have a 20-minute plot line where it's actually also somebody's brother is also on the
yeah,
train, the guy, and it's been
yeah,
back and forth, and there'd be a love life somewhere,
yeah,
and you'd have 20 minutes where there's a holiday where kind of the signalman goes and takes a break, goes, but no, he feels he has
yeah,
to come back. You'd have all this stuff, whereas this
yeah,
is just
yeah,
in there, cramped,
yeah,
tight
yeah,
knit,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
35 minutes you don't get
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it says what it wants to say, kind of, and perhaps its message, leaves you thinking, and yeah,
And it's the crampness and also the sparsity again when they're talking. There are big
yeah,
gaps between their dialogue. It's very well paced
mm,
in that
mm,
from the acting side as well.
mm, yeah.
Jacob, your
I
thoughts
mean,
on it because you haven't
yeah,
actually
yeah,
given.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you think, Jacob? Did you
No,
prefer this one to One to the Curious?
I did. I preferred it more, and a lot of that. Yeah, the cinematography was really good. The performance, like there's more. I know it's just talking, but there's more going on than just wandering around
Yeah,
going, "Hey, is that guy alive?" Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell it's concrete, and I
yeah,
preferred that.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I almost wonder with One to the Curious if you'd prefer in the manner that is presented in the original short story, where kind of essentially the bit in the middle where the crown is opened, essentially when Paxton comes and meets Black and everything, halfway through the story after he's dug up the crown. That initial meeting kind of is at the beginning of the story, and then the rest of it is backstory. So you already know there's something going on, and then you see the backstory of how he got the crown, and then you go see the crown. So it's just formatted very slightly differently. I wonder if that would have worked for you there. So right at the beginning, we've got something leading up to it, and he's already
yeah,
there, which there's worrying,
yeah,
and then it's essentially the first half is a flashback.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you've got something to chew on.
yeah. I mean, you talk about like the kind of the adaptation change in yours, Kieran. Saying it was more effective. To have him, give him that that agency. To that decision. I'm putting it back. And again with this, I think the small but key adaptation change in this, the more explicit link to the Signalman and the Spectre, and just make it so it's literally is more literally an echo of his future is very effective. I'm pleased that they had that in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, but speaking of tweaks to the original source material, jumping all the way through probably the 2000s into the 2010s and into just a couple of years ago, 2023. After all the James stuff, so in 2023, Mark Gatiss has been running Ghost Story for Christmas for a while, and somebody goes, "Look, we've got a big documentary on Arthur Conan Doyle coming out. The BBC will essentially give you the funding to make sure you do another one if you make it a Conan Doyle story." Which is why we moved away from M.R. James out of Count Magnus, which a lot of people don't like. I think is actually okay. Actually,
I'm not keen
me,
on that. Yeah, I wasn't that keen on Count Magnus. I thought it was definitely the dullest of the Gatiss ones.
Whereas I think Martin's Close is actually the dullest because it's just an awful lot.
Oh, but you got Capaldi.
Absolutely wasted, completely misused in it. But yeah,
and the really entertaining and the really horrible judge. It was just
the really horrible judge is horrible, but
well,
I like that.
I guess Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's had some pretty big adaptation on the BBC. I don't know.
Yes, by the same person, strangely enough.
Yeah, but so the lot number 249, I guess 249. I don't know.
Yeah.
However you would say it.
We're going on the Blink 182 argument now. How do you say it?
Blink 182. Maybe that's how that's how Rafe Fiennes says it. So
Surprised he's not been in a Ghost Story for Christmas yet.
It's an Arthur Conan Doyle story, but it was published in an American magazine, Harper's. So, yep, I guess just trying to make a buck or something. I don't know how big he was by this point, but
what year was it?
1892.
So he had so Studying Scarlet is 1888. So Sherlock Holmes was around. I don't think it was massive, but Sherlock Holmes became massive enough that when he killed him off in the Reichenbach Falls, about a week afterwards, after its release, the public were wearing black armbands, like in memoriam. Like that's how big Sherlock Holmes got. But essentially, Conan Doyle killed him off because he was fed up of writing because it took ages, and something along the lines of, I'd quite like to punch that Holmes fellow or something like that. And he thought his historical stuff and his other stuff was far better. Hilariously enough, in terms of the supernatural,
and the public disagrees.
Yeah, hilariously enough, in terms of the supernatural, because Sherlock Holmes is such a rational character, Conan Doyle massively into spiritualism.
Super weird guy.
So weird. Like he just all the. So the fairy photos. I've forgotten what it's called, like the Cottington fairies, or whatever.
The Cottingley fairies.
That's the one. Yeah. Where they...
I know, because it's 2 miles that way.
Okay, so essentially, if you don't know,
that's my neck of the woods.
You probably know the photo, even if you don't know the story, where two little girls in like 1910, 1911, essentially got pictures of fairies, cut them out, posed with them, took photos, and passed them off as real fairies.
And that
the world believed them, including Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes,
I love that.
Sent them
so Arthur Conan Doyle today would be falling for like AI.
Yes, he'd be falling for AI. He'd be like in the nicest way, not kind of. He'd definitely be one of these people convinced by like unsolved mysteries on Netflix, where the pyramids were made by aliens and stuff like that, and Atlantis is actually in Brazil, or stuff along those lines. You know those documentaries that are on like History Channel, stuff like that, Ancient Aliens. He would definitely be into all of that. So much so that he was best mates with Harry Houdini, who
he thought he was really magic.
Conan Doyle was giving all these lectures on spiritualism, communicating with the other realms and stuff like this, and Houdini would just be the back going, "Please stop! You're embarrassing yourself. Please stop this. It's not good."
I saw. I went to Chitra Ramaswamy's review of lot number 249 in The Guardian, and I saw she mentioned that this was written during the height of Egypt mania, which is also what it says on the Wikipedia article about the book. So I had to do a little bit of research. Like, was this actually the height of Egypt mania? Yes. When you click on it, you go to on Wikipedia. It takes you to this list of 19th century events. It's hard for me to actually pin down.
Although I'd say the height of that would be Tutankhamun. Surely, and that's 20.
Yeah, that's a little bit later. But
the height of it
was
more like the early 1800s and early 1900s. This is
I suppose there was stuff in the British Museum by this point.
So the early 1800s, essentially, one of the reasons why Napoleon ends up in Egypt is because he actually wants to do a load of ancient Egyptology stuff and raid it, which is one of the reasons why he ends up in Alexandria. 12 hours after Nelson had left.
Though he didn't fire cannons at the pyramids, no matter what Ridley Scott says.
If you asked me, at the height of Egyptomania might be a bit of a stretch based on what the big. Well, apparently it was still big in like the elite circles, just showing off your mummies and stuff that you owned.
So you have so Conan Doyle had already put in it's from India or Egypt. I think there's a sarcophagus in one of the big houses that they go into in the Sign of the Fall. which is around that time he published it. He also writes a short story I read earlier today called The Rings of Thoth, where essentially as a guy an Egyptian scholar goes into the Louvre and finds somebody who actually had been cursed like thousands of years ago by an Egyptian kind of like priest, never to die and therefore never to reunite with his beloved. And the body gets buried, but has been recently rediscovered, and so he's come back there to die in the arms of that. You also have a book called The Beetle by Richard Marsh, which I've read the first like quarter of, where kind of like Egyptian priests get reincarnated into scarabs as well. And I think it's the late 1890s, early 1900s, around that time. You also get Bram Stoker publishing The Jewel of Seven Stars, which features the attempted resurrection of an Egyptian mummy queen,
Well,
and that gets made by Hammer into Blood on the Mummy's Tomb. So
I-
there
I've
is
just
stuff
realised
going on.
I should be holding this throughout this.
Yes, you should. Yes.
Well, and also like the big mummy fiction.
I've got my little Egyptian shelf in front of me.
Oh my!
Woo!
It's got a Egyptian puzzle on there too.
Sam has an Egyptian shelf. I love it.
Everything that I can find, like the big mummy fiction, all that. Like we're talking early to mid 1800s for a lot of that. So I just want to give that very small pedantic correction to this is the height of Egyptomania.
Yeah. No, I there are several phases. You've got that, but also I think there's a lot of stuff at this time in the 1800s, sort of 1880s, 1890s, around kind of the colonial issues, where it's at its height, and now kind of it's been going for a while, and people are starting to have iffy feelings about it. It doesn't collapse until decades later.
We're literally in like the dividing up of Africa by Europe. Like
and essentially this story is what do morally reprehensible posh colonialist boys get up to at night? You know, it's
and do to people, due to kind of. Because I mean, again, Sheridan Le Fanu had written Green Tea.
Well, here's a sentence. Here's a sentence that I love. Lot number 249 was not the first work of English literature to feature a reanimated mummy. That would be The Mummy, like 70 years earlier. So like
there's one in the 20s, isn't there?
No duh, they're this is not the first one.
I had read that and I've forgotten about it, and I do need to read it at some point. But yeah, so I think in terms of sort of like the big kind of urban gothic people, there is a little bit of revival. It seems interesting that, again, sort of Bram Stoker, Conan Doyle, and one or two other people within a 10-year period, there's like 6 or 7 big kind of mummy gothic horror stories, essentially. That all focus around kind of Egypt and Egyptian mummy. So even if it's not the height of it, there's definitely something in the air at that time. And again, I think that comes a lot of people starting to question colonialism. Not Rudyard Kipling, who was like, yay, let's conquer the Indians.
Not most people.
But there are people, again, Sheridan Le Fanu's Green Tea is a story about essentially a demonic monkey that kind of haunts somebody whenever they close their eyes. It's mentioned in The Dead Room, and this is meant to be a thing. Obviously, tea is an import from India, so it's part of the slave trade, there, kind of colonialism, and therefore there's stuff like that. So there is stuff in the air, and there's definitely a colonial slant to it, which is happening at the height of the British Empire and places like that, which is starting to happen.
We're still in this is with academia, but it's a young almost doctor who apparently his first name is Abercrombie. I didn't hear that in the movie, but his name is Abercrombie Smith, which is an amazing name. He sounds more he sounds like he should be in Egypt digging stuff up, not becoming a medical doctor. I think they got the names backwards. But anyway, he's at Oxford, and well, Kieran, you said maybe the other movie would be better if it opens with him saying, I'm going to tell you this story. That's how this one opens. By the way, the very tight 30 minutes is what they're shooting for here.
This is around the time where they kind of go, you know what, we're only going to give you 30 minutes to do these things. So the last.
To be honest, I can't really see what they do with more time with this one, really.
Yeah, no. I mean, I do think this is something that could be expanded into a full slasher style movie. But yeah, of the 3 of these, it is probably the most ripe for making it a bigger story. But yeah, Abercrombie Smith sits down to tell some guy, I don't know who he is. He says, I'm going to tell you the whole black business, which must have been lifted straight from the story, because that sounds like a very old-timey way to say, I'm going to tell you all this terrible stuff. Um,
the,
and
I can't
Kieran is
remember.
Googling.
I have read it
Well,
a couple of
you
years
were
ago
both
before this one
a
came
step
out.
ahead of me. Maybe I should have read it. I thought reading the Wikipedia summary was really doing some work there, but yeah, Abercrombie Smith he tells all of the black business to his friend, which is yeah, I have a little like twink friend, and he told me that this
Uh,
whose name is Monkhouse Lee. Um, he's going. He's got a friend who is up to
oh,
some no good, and so he
yeah.
tells his friend Abercrombie.
He honestly, yeah. Freddie Fox plays such a good kind
Oh,
of morally disreputable pretty boy. Basically,
Freddie Fox is
he's done it so many
incredible.
times, but he's so good at that kind of
What
role.
What do you mean he's done it many times? I've never heard of Freddie Fox until this. What is he in? What is he known for?
Well, he was in the most recent series of Doctor Who. He was in Slow
Was he? Was he?
Horses. Yeah, lots of TV. Yeah, yeah. The first
Is
two
he a
series of
British
Slow Horses,
TV
he was like,
actor?
he was like their MOD kind of. Not, was he? Was it? No, he was at the park, wasn't he? He was like a sort of a middle management guy at the park.
He was Ian Fleming in the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So that's Guy Ritchie's movie from last year. He was
Yeah.
in King Arthur Legend of the Sword. He was in the 2015 Victor Frankenstein. He was in Symphony 2, very young.
He's done other stuff with Rusty Davies, he was in Cucumber.
Yeah, he's Loki in The Sandman
There you
this
go.
year. So
Well, I've seen him
he's up and
in.
coming.
I've seen him in nothing until
Yeah.
this, but yeah, he is very
But
good.
he's part of the Fox acting dynasty, basically. He's the latest of that generation.
Who is the main Fox that I would be knowing from
Uh,
that?
Edward Fox from Day of the Jackal.
Oh, interesting.
70s.
Okay.
He's his granddad, I want to say.
Okay. So he's a Nepo baby. Got it.
Yes, yeah.
Kit Harington plays Abercrombie, and I mean, I think Kit Harington's one of those actors where he does whatever the job is, but like he never stands out as particularly excellent.
Yeah.
He
It's weird hearing him with like quite a posh accent because you're so used to the Jon Snow voice, aren't you?
yeah, I guess that's true. I picked this because I knew who Kit Harington was. Apparently,
You've vaguely heard of Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't know what the story was. I was like, Kit Harington, perfect. But yeah, I mean, he's good. He can brush his mustache really well, and he could be like, I think he's very good at being serious. That's what Kit Harington is best at. I would like
you wouldn't
to see
imagine him
be
in a
funny.
comedy role.
Yeah.
No.
No, he'd be the straight man. He'd be the bad guy in like the comedy, action movie. Or I guess a Jon Snow type character. He's pretty good at that. But yeah, so the two of them go see Edward Bellingham, who is Freddie Fox, and he's got a bunch of weird stuff in his room. It's all Egyptian, and the big thing that stands out is he's got a mummy in a sarcophagus just hanging out. And boy, if that isn't creepy. And then late in the night, Kit Harington hears, oh, there's a bunch of sound coming from his room. This is stopping me from sleeping. So he confronts him the next day to be like, hey, well, you need to keep it down, buddy. And, Freddie Fox says, no, not going to do it. They have a little fight. They have a tiff. And then, yeah, I don't know. There's this sportsman who has a mustache as well, and I guess he's targeted next, or there's a few people that are targeted and are dying. They're getting garroted and drowned, and it turns out it was the mummy. The mummy's the bad guy, and he's being controlled by Bellingham, and so after finishing up telling the story to his friend, which was all the backstory, Kit Harington goes to brush his mustache and then confront Bellingham, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna chop up this mummy. We're gonna burn it." He does it at gunpoint too. Chop it up, burn it. You got to burn the papyrus you used to control him that is taped to you, which I don't know how he knows that it's attached to like his body, but he does. Maybe because he's a doctor, or soon to be doctor. Yep.
I mean, he did bring him back to like resuscitate him earlier in the film, so maybe he sensed it then.
He sensed it under all the clothes. And then,
I mean, the fact we've got the resurrection of an Egyptian mummy going around killing people, apparently knowing where a piece of papyrus is the bit that you're stuck on.
Yeah, the controlling a mummy with papyrus makes sense to me. Knowing where that is on somebody when you don't have superpowers doesn't. And he also gets followed by the mummy at a certain point, I guess, before he confronts him. So he does go confront him.
Yeah.
And of course, Bellingham is very upset with that. And in the changing the ending twist, he has lot 250, which is like, I don't know, when you have the next upgrade of like the robot that the bad guy's going to send. Like when there's the other Iron Man suit that Jeff Bridges busts out.
Again, this is a change to an end, a bit like the Mezzo tint, where kind of, again, the story you have kind of the chase back, and then kind of he roughs him up and cuts him up, and that's kind of the end of the story. There is no final kind of pulpy twist in the tail stinger ending. So
and do you know that added strand I didn't mind at all? Do you know what I absolutely hated? Can you guess what I hated?
Yeah, this is the one that everyone hates. This was written, this original story by Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, Mark Gatiss has done some stories by Arthur Conan Doyle before. I wonder if he might combine the two in any way for no reason at all.
What is this? Because I didn't pick up on it at all.
So the guy's been talking. The guy he's been talking to, who's never named in this, says, "Oh, I've got some lodgings in London on Baker Street. I could have a doctor to room with."
Sorry, is he friends with Dr. Watson? I presume.
Yes, he's
That's the wrong doctor.
Basically, it's what they're implying. And you look at the actor, it's like, he's in the classic Sherlock mold, basically, isn't he? He's just,
he's got the kind of Jeremy Brett hair. He's got the pipe. He's in a dressing gown. He's in an armchair.
Hang on.
There is no need for this.
The friend he's talking to is
Sherlock.
Is Sherlock. Okay, that's dumb.
Well done.
Nope.
Yes,
I didn't pick up on that at all, thankfully. So. Maybe they should have cast Benedict Cumberbatch to sit there for 5 seconds, and I would have gotten it.
That would have blown that budget.
Yeah, but well, apparently he tells that to Sherlock Holmes, and then the mummy in the book, apparently Bellingham just runs away to Africa. But in this, he's got lot 250, and he sends that after Kit Harington and Monkhouse, and the mummy kills both of them. We watch in first-person mummy vision as Kit Harington is choked to death, and then it's over.
By the way, you keep saying book. It's a story of about 15,000 words.
Sorry, the magazine short story.
A short story, now we might call it a novelette, which is like in between a short story and novella. If you people on the word counts it fussy, but short story.
I should mention the mummy played by James Swanton, who's a really good, a bit like is like a British Doug Jones, basically. He's tall and thin and looks good under a lot of prosthetics. So he plays a lot of monsters in films.
There you go. Yeah. Well, then he does a great job being the mummy, I guess.
And his other thing is he's a Dickens scholar, and he does Dickens readings around Christmas. He does live performances, which is nice. He did the Signalman I think a few weeks ago in London.
Well, and then, I didn't watch the other modern ones, so I don't know if they only used American Horror Story font for this one, or if they have been using it. But they were like, hey, what's another successful horror show? We'll just steal that font. I don't like that aspect of it.
I think each one picks its own typeface, I think, depending on the story, doesn't it, from memory?
Yeah, it doesn't fit at all.
Just on Jim Swanton, I'm just looking him up very quickly. He was in Apartment 7A, which is the Rosemary Baby prequel, which I think we did. He was in Tarot, which is not good. He was also in The First Omen.
He was in Host.
Yeah, he was in Host. He was in Stop Motion, which I haven't seen yet. It's been
yes, it's so good.
Dodgy stuff as well. He was in Dash Cam as well. So he's been in some stuff. He's getting up and up, but
just overall, like compared to the other two, this is shot and edited like more of a modern TV episode.
Definitely,
this could fit right into like the AHS anthology stuff.
Or it's one step removed from like one of the scarier Doctor Who episodes, isn't it? As well, I mean, literally, they Mummy on the Orient Express a few years ago, didn't they? And it's not that far.
I think
from it really.
So there's music in the other two, but I think it's more subtle or maybe not as loud. It's mixed a lot higher in here. It's used to really heighten the what's happening.
Yeah. Well, the 70s ones didn't really have original soundtracks. They sort of recycled like a old piece of music, didn't they? And or just little incidental piece. I mean, one thing I didn't mention of the Signalman, actually, the soundscape of that is key. Just how the the sounds of machinery and the bell and everything else can really
just kind of feel like high pitched droning, almost kind of swelling.
Because in the book he talks about obviously he knows when the bell's actually going off, but when the ghost rings, it's different. It's like it gives out a tone that didn't come from a human interaction, basically. And they do that in the kind of the sound mix in a really clever way. Say like a atonal kind of noise.
You could tell this is very much like a modern television production. It feels it. It looks it. So I mean, if you're going to watch these and you don't like older stuff, I mean, you'll probably have more an affinity for the modern visuals and style.
And I will say,
I'd say all of the Gates ones, all of the Gates ones have like a modern kind of looks to them, and the way they're produced, really, they kind of look like standard TV, really, don't they?
I'll say if you hadn't seen it, and Jacob, when we were picking these, you were like, some of these words English with the tractate Middith, which is a section of the Talmud, so it's a Hebrew text.
Oh, okay. So that's
if you watch that
Hebrew
one from
word.
2013, like the 2013 tractate Middith, the Gates one looks gorgeous. I mean, there are so many shots of him going around an old library, and you've got sunbeams coming in, and it's all
catching the dust in the air.
It's such a gorgeous looking production as well. And Saturday one is great, and it's one of the better ones. It's very good.
Yeah,
this one did crack Kieran's top 10. I'll let you go read to find out where, but it is not his top modern one.
Yeah.
So
no.
For me, it's kind of mid-rung, I'd say, somewhere in the middle of the pack. I think there are better modern ones. Dead Rooms, as we've already said, is probably is probably up there. But Tractate Middith, and I even liked the Mezzo.
The Mezzo Gent. I did like the Mezzo Gent.
I like that as well.
Mezzo Gent is a style of engraving, Jacob.
Oh, okay. I'd also say for this one, like, there touches on, like, because they say, oh, you want the Empire to beat down Sudan or something like that. There's little allusions to colonialism stuff in there, but I mean, I would say that overall, like, the themes of it are like kind of secondary and not explored, other than that's what the story is kind of about.
With the Sudan thing, a couple of decades prior to the original short story. So in 1960, you had General Gordon, who was posted in India, and then who was well known for kind of suppressing rebellions in kind of Britain's foray into China and stuff like that. So he's a kind of certain national kind of general, in the same way that I guess somebody like Custer was for sort of the Civil War in the US, and generally those kinds of national kind of military figures. But then he dies trying to defend Khartoum in Sudan in 1865 after kind of like holding it out against enemies for about a year, and this was national news, like similar to sort of Sitting Bull. It's Custer, isn't it? Over there. So that kind of monumental figure, in that it reverberates throughout. So the fact he was stationed in in Egypt, and you've got that Egyptology link with the mummy, and then references to the Sudan where Britain is still there. Kind of General Gordon is still a figure which kind of reverberates probably to Gundam, which is probably what Gatiss is picking up on there. I can't remember if there's a Sudan reference in the original story. I haven't read it in a couple of years since it came out.
I do wonder, would M.R. James like the character of Abercrombie Smith or not? I'm unsure. But I don't think he liked Bellingham because that guy is messing with history instead of
yeah. He's all about laying his hands on things and poking around and messing things up. Yeah,
Definitely not a person James would go with. Very, very quickly on a slightly related/unrelated note, going back, I've just thought of this. The 1977 one, Stigma, the first one set in the modern day, is set in the same location. So there's a circle of stones that's very prominent in that film. If you want a better kind of creepy TV around that time from the same year, Children of the Stones is a 6/7 part kind of like family horror series from, again, 1977 that uses those stones as kind of its prominent element. That is very good. Go check it out. Children of the Stones is great from the same year. It's like 7 episodes long, and it's one of these kind of cult classic children's TV shows that kind of gave kids like nightmares for a bit, sort of back then,
And also, I keep saying, I don't know if they mention it in the short. But I keep seeing Abercrombie Smith referred to as also an athlete, which I saw other people being athletes, not him. But if that's the case, like, yeah, he's kind of the picture of like the modern man's man in 1892. He's an athlete and a doctor and has a perfect mustache. So, yeah.
But very, very somebody who probably would have been kind of trained up to go and lead kind of military expeditions for the Empire, sort of thing.
And also learning that Gatiss is gay, I do wonder, like, what there was.
There is definitely a homoerotic subtext.
Yeah, with Monkhouse. So
I don't think it's subtext. I think it's
okay. Yeah, the homoerotic text.
Yes.
Yeah.
They haven't actually said the words, but it's as near as you can get without needing to say it.
No. You're right.
Yeah. I called him a twink, and that had to have been intentional. Like, I don't. If you told me Monkhouse Lee describe him, like, I probably would have gone more with the other mustache guy. But yeah. So there you go. That is that's these 3, and then there will be a new one this year. So go watch that tomorrow.
Comes out tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, they're more or less all worth your time. A couple aren't as good, but generally, check them out.
Yeah, and again, they're very good for me as a kind of, like, I guess I'm doing a PhD in ghosts. I'm like a ghost scholar now officially, like theoretically, sort of
scholar of ghosts. I think a ghost
scholar of ghost
like
stories as well.
Ghost.
So it's interesting for me, and it's interesting from a kind of, again, a film history kind of thing of looking at a different mode of film storytelling in a shorter format on TV, and the fact that it's been going since 1971, and in one form or another it's still going in 2025 is interesting, and it's a good job it's still going, because when he made Lot 249 in 2023, it was essentially because they were doing a Conan Doyle kind of documentary and stuff, and they could tie it in by keeping the Conan Doyle stuff alive on that point. At the time, Gatiss was like, I don't know if they'll let me do another one, because unless you're going to do a documentary on Edith Wharton or A.F. Benson or one of these other kind of things, you're not going to do a documentary. I mean, you only got the M.R. James attracted because they've done a documentary on it and they were tying it in. So last year he said it might be the last one. Well, he'd said it might be the last one early on, and then they came out with last year's Woman in Stone based on Manslaughter in Marble. But he has come out and said, you know what, the BBC actually are quite good. They're not giving, they don't have that much money to spend, but the people that kind of are slightly above him are always trying to work out ways they can get him the money to make this. And the fact that money is being spent and allocated and found to make kind of artful adaptations of 1800s ghost stories for British television, short film, kind of like that. The fact it's still going is a marvel, and most of the time they've got big names in it, and they're still doing something of quality for somebody. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week to wrap up 2025. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you're celebrating.
Next year we must do something on a different religion festival. We'll do a Diwali episode or something like that.
Yeah,
A Hanukkah
do a
episode.
Kwanzaa episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Second Cut Pod Substack, where this week I've published my review of Wake Up Dead Man, the new Benoit Blanc Knives Out mystery film, which is very good and on Netflix now. So yeah, check out the review, check out the film. It's good.
It's very different than the fact it's hanging around a Catholic church the entire time, where most of these are hanging around Protestant stuff.
That's true. Yeah, very different vibe.
Yeah, although still coming back from the grave. Hopefully you don't find me anywhere. If you don't, K-Judgmental in various places. I have my review of Avatar: Fire and Ash out on the Substack, and tomorrow will be coming out my review of the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which we did do the second one years ago. I think we mentioned it at some point. So go back to the archives and find our discussion of the first one.
Yeah, it's an awesome movie. And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. I don't know. I've probably written some Christmas stuff somewhere on TFM. Go check that out. That we only have a few more years to read at the Film Magazine.
Yeah, and of course check out Kieran's Ghost Stories for Christmas ranking over there. It'll be on the front page probably.
I'm sure Jacob after this will put it in the description below.
Yes, or I'll put it on our socials or something. So that is it. Thank you for listening. And email secondcutpod@gmail.com. We're at secondcutpod everywhere. That's it. Goodbye.
Adios.
Bye.